Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Coming up, actor Chris Noth accused of another violent attack. But is the media responsible for minimizing the most violent sexual assault allegations because they lump together any gross behavior with violent assaults? That's coming up. But first, Kim Potter, guilty on 2 counts of manslaughter, a jury finding the former Minnesota police officer who drew her handgun instead of her taser during a traffic stop in April, where she fatally shot 20-year-old Dante Wright, guilty of first and second-degree manslaughter. Here's how it went down in the courtroom this afternoon.
We, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the first degree while committing a misdemeanor on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, state of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. The verdict on count 2 is we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the second degree, culpable negligence on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, state of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty.
Now, remember, Wright was pulled over for an expired tag, but then when officers realized he had an outstanding warrant for a weapons violation, they tried to arrest him. He resisted. Then there was the moment of the shooting and Potter's reaction afterwards, where she began crying. The jury took 27 and a half hours to reach a verdict, and 2 days ago it seemed like they might be deadlocked. They asked the judge what to do if they couldn't reach a consensus. The judge told them to go back, clearly what they did. Potter will be sentenced on February the 18th. And here is what someone convicted of first and second degree manslaughter in Minnesota is looking at. First degree manslaughter carries up to 15 years in prison, second degree manslaughter up to 10 years. But this is not a case of 25 years. In Minnesota, for these kinds of multiple convictions, they're served concurrently. Means same time. So while she faces time on both charges, she would only serve the higher of the two. I think it's probably likely, based on the Minnesota sentencing guidelines, she's looking at closer to the 6 to 8 range on the first-degree manslaughter. But, of course, that will be up to the judge. Joining us now, again, Dina Sayegdal, an attorney who is a legal analyst for the Law and Crime Network, and Robert Patillo, civil rights attorney. Thank you both for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so, Dina, you had thought that when the jury was having some trouble, that they were either going to be hung or that there would be an acquittal. What do you think happened?
You know, I'm still surprised about the verdict, quite frankly, because I think they applied the standard of she should have known better. And that wasn't actually the legal standard here. I mean, the conscious act that she took or the reckless act seems to be only the fact that she picked up her gun. I think the best question is, what could she have done differently other than picking up the gun? She did all the training they asked of her. You know, she was sober, she was alert. Other than the fact that she handled her gun, she seemed to have done nothing wrong there. So to me, I still think the evidence wasn't there for these particular charges.
Robert, the only reason that I was surprised that they reached a verdict, because I thought there would be a hung jury here, was because, you know, on my radio show, which is a pretty diverse audience, I had people calling in with all sorts of different views all the time, different analysis, et cetera. But I think that in the end, when it came down to the legal question, not do you feel for her, not are you upset, but on the legal question, the jurors just may have felt like they didn't have a lot of wiggle room.
I think you're absolutely correct. And I think that the defense team did not do her any favors in their closing arguments. You know, this kind of the rule of primacy and recency. I believe that much of what was achieved during direct and cross-examination by the defense team was negated by a closing argument saying that a mistake is not a crime. That simply is just not congruent with everything else that happened in the case. And when it comes to the question of, well, what else could she have done to be less reckless? If you watch the video again, she yells, taser, taser, taser. Then there's a gap of about 5 seconds. I think that's the crucial point, because of that, during that period of time, she could have looked down to notice that there's a gun in her hand and not a taser in her hand. And I think because of things such as that, that's why the jury came to the realization, and came to the determination that yes, this rises to the level of manslaughter. This isn't a murder case, as some people in the community were calling for. This isn't a case of mens rea where there was some kind of malice afterthought involved, but it was a mistake that resulted in the death of another, resulting in a manslaughter conviction.
Now, Robert, I've heard some saying, well, I hope she gets the max here. I hope she doesn't get the max here. First of all, because that wouldn't be consistent with what anyone else in her position would get. And secondly, because now that she's being convicted, now is the time where sympathy can play into this, where it can factor in. Do you think it should?
I think absolutely should. I've cut my teeth as a defense lawyer my whole life, so I'm always going to see it from the defendant's point of view. That when you're dealing with an individual who has 26 years of service to the community, who has instructed and supervised other officers, who has no criminal record, who doesn't have a long, compared to, let's say, the Chauvin trial, where you had a long list of, a long history of misconduct charges and allegations against them. You don't have the same thing present here. So I do think that you will get a sentence closer to the minimum as opposed to the maximum, so somewhere in that 6 to 8 year range, and then she'll serve some percentage thereof. So I think that's where we're going to end up when sentencing comes down.
Yeah, and I do think it is reckless of people who aren't following the case to just say, she should get the maximum, she should get the maximum, rather than saying, well, wait a sec. People always say, well, we want police officers to be treated like anyone else in that position. Well, then you should want them to be treated the same way that anyone else in the state of Minnesota would get treated when convicted of first-degree manslaughter, second-degree manslaughter, etc. There was an interesting moment after the conviction today. The defense asking that Kim Potter be let out on bond until the sentencing. Here's a part of that exchange. Or not.
She's not a danger to the public whatsoever. She's made all her court appearances, including all appearances in the court. It is the Christmas holiday season. She's a devoted Catholic, no less. And there is no point to incarcerate her at this point in time because, A, you haven't decided what the sentence is going to be. B, the dispositional departure arguments are quite strong on this case. And C, it's not necessary for the preservation of public safety.
I am going to require that she be taken into custody and held without bail. And I recognize your arguments, Mr. Ng and Mr. Gray, but I cannot treat this case any differently than any other case.
Well, that's what I want to ask you both about, because obviously the stuff about being a Catholic and this being Christmas isn't going to sway the judge. The judge saying she's going to treat this case like any other. But here's my question, Dina. If this was a less high-profile case, is it possible that Potter would be released pending her sentencing on these charges?
I would hope that this judge is being honest when she's saying she's trying to be consistent, but I think it's possible. She's not being charged with murder here. It does seem harsh. She has years of service to the community, a very clean record. The facts here, although they did find her guilty, there were not that much showing depravity or not that much toward the negligence. I think that there was definitely a case here for allowing her to be home for her holidays until sentencing.
I want to bring in a viewer in a minute, but Robert, real quick thought on that, on the bail ruling?
Well, I think also there was something, it was mentioned that she did not live in the jurisdiction and therefore her bond was being revoked. And I think the things such as that may have been what swayed the judge to believe that she needed to be confined until such time as sentencing.
Let's bring in, because again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to incorporate all of you, the viewers, into these kinds of conversations, because look, any of you could have been jurors as well in this kind of case. Carol Lee joins us from Mount Airy, Maryland. Carol Lee, how you doing? What do you got? What are you thinking about this case?
I'm doing well, Dan. Thank you. I think that this was a tragic accident, and I think that circumstances being what they were, she made an error in judgment. People that have no police training, that have never been exposed to law enforcement, can't even begin to comprehend what it would be like to be in the position she was put in. And I, for one, am tired of listening to these experts tell us what she should have done versus what she did. I don't think that she committed a crime, but I'm not familiar with the laws of Minnesota. So I don't.
And I have, Hey, Carol Lee, thank you. Because I have to say, Robert, I expected there to be at least one juror on this jury who shared Carol Lee's view on this, and there wasn't. Are you surprised by that?
A very cogent case. And to Carol Lee's point, there's a big difference between, let's say, the gun fell out of this holster and accidentally shot Mr. Wright, and that killed him. That's an accident. That's something where you will not have culpability. There's no negligence there. Versus the instant situation where she said she meant to commit the volitional act of pulling the trigger on a gun, but the mistake was pulling the trigger on the wrong gun. Well, that is a volitional act, and that is negligence, therefore vitiating a manslaughter conviction. So I think that getting the information, the proper understanding of what the charges were to the public, I think that will instill more confidence in the verdict. But I do believe that because the state did such a good job of laying out the elements of the crime, the jury spent several days deliberating. That's how we came to a unanimous verdict on both charges.
Yeah. Let's do this. I want to take a break here. I want to ask you both to stick around, because there's a really important thing that's really bothering me about this case. All right, whether you think Kim Potter is guilty or not, I find this disgusting. People cheering outside of the Minnesota courthouse as the judge reads the verdict. There was even a band. Retired Tulsa Police Lieutenant Sean Sticks Larkin will join us as well, coming up next.
Find the defendant guilty.
That was the scene outside the Hennepin County Courthouse earlier today after former police officer Kim Potter was convicted on 2 counts of manslaughter. I found it to be pretty disgusting. All this cheering, over the top celebrating, you'd think the Vikings just won the Super Bowl. A young man died, and everyone in that courtroom agreed that Kim Potter made a fatal mistake. She was horribly sorry for what she did the moment it happened. That doesn't mean she isn't guilty of the crime of manslaughter. But what are we cheering about? There was even a brass band playing. Conviction party? Look, whether you think she's guilty or not is an entirely separate issue. This was a tragedy. There are people whose lives are irreparably shattered. And to be clear, I'm not criticizing the brother of Dante Wright, you may have seen in that first clip, or any of the Wright family members. That's totally different. I understand their reactions. But for everyone else, if you think the verdict was just, I get it. But all the people playing, the music, the cheering, the dancing for joy outside the courthouse, there's nothing to celebrate here. To get a police perspective on this, we're joined by former Tulsa Police Lieutenant Sean Sticks Larkin. Sticks, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Before I get into the police side of this, let me just ask for your reaction to that sort of party atmosphere outside the courthouse.
Dan, you actually took the words right out of mouth. I was going to say it was like a sports celebration when, you know, a group of people were happy that their team won the Super Bowl, the World Series, or something like that. And, you know, I was a police officer almost 25 years, and obviously have followed law enforcement-related situations like this throughout my career. The only time I can think of seeing crowds typically celebrate is when a police officer is convicted for something. And you know, that's unfortunate. I mean, you hit it right on the head. You know, Mr. Wright's life has been lost. Both families are tragically affected, and there should be no reason for anybody celebrating this conviction.
Let me ask you your reaction as a police officer, someone who has been in law enforcement your entire career. What do you make of the verdict?
I'm not surprised with it. And, you know, you and I have had private conversations. I've talked with other law enforcement officers about this incident. I understand how it happened. It's tragic. It should not have happened. But I do understand those type of stressful situations. People who are not used to being in those stressful situations sometimes make these type of horrific mistakes. When a police officer makes a mistake, we can have these type of results, unfortunately. I do understand it, though. And, you know, like I told you privately, it's kind of like an 18-year-old kid who's texting on his phone and driving through an intersection and unfortunately kills somebody. Horrible, horrible accident, but he should be held accountable for it, just as, you know, Miss Potter was.
And you were telling me that there's actually another example where you're from of I guess he wasn't actually a full-time officer, but someone who was a volunteer who ended up making the same mistake, and he's serving time?
That's correct. His name was Robert Bates, Bob Bates, here in Tulsa County. He was a reserve Tulsa County deputy. It happened in 2015. Said the exact same thing: taser, taser, taser. And actually, I believe he had a revolver and ended up shooting and killing a man. Here in the state of Oklahoma, he went to trial. He was convicted. He received the maximum sentence for manslaughter, which here is only 4 years. He served about a year and a half, spent the rest of his time on probation, and he's now back out in the community again.
I want to play you a piece of sound. This will be number 2 from the Attorney General from Minnesota, because he spoke to people in law enforcement. Obviously, he was the one behind the prosecution here. I'm wondering what you make of this comment from Keith Ellison. This is number 2, the Attorney General of Minnesota.
My thoughts are also with those who work in law enforcement and public safety. We hold you in high regard, and we also hold you to high standards. We don't want you to be discouraged. Your community respects and appreciates you. We want you to uphold the highest ideals of our society and ideals of safety. And when a member of your profession is held accountable, it does not diminish you.
You know, I heard that, and I actually appreciated it, but I'm not in law enforcement, so I wanted to ask you, what did you make of it?
No, I agree. It is nice to hear, especially if they're on the prosecution side of things. This job is a tough job, and it's been really, really tough the last few years. And to hear those type of statements from people in politics, it means a lot right now, especially at the end of this trial.
Let me do this. Let me take a break here because we want to hear from some more of you, our viewers. Again, some of you not happy with the verdict. I also want to bring back my legal guests in a moment to talk about the cheering and the celebrating, etc., and what they make of that celebration outside the courthouse. Coming up. Let me ask Robert Patillo. Robert, are you offended by that? You think I'm overreacting?
Well, I don't know about overreacting, but I do think this is part of the tribalization of America that we've seen. I go back to the Rittenhour case from a few weeks ago, where we saw a victory lap, literally. After Rittenhouse was acquitted, he gave a speech this weekend. He's going to rock and roll concerts. He's meeting with the President of the United States after killing 2 people. And the fact that this is the American society that we live in now, where somebody, you believe they share your team, they wear the same jersey as you, that you will forgive anything that's been done. I think this is part of the caustic nature of American society. We have to start rooting out, regardless of which side of the aisle is on. We have to give a true value back to human life and understand the gravity of these situations. This is not a reality TV show. This is not the latest Ben series on Netflix. These are people's lives that have been taken, and we have to reestablish some level of civility in America.
Well said. Let's go to another viewer who's called in. Ted from Baldwinsville, New York, joins us on the Kim Potter conviction. Ted, thanks for joining us. What did you make of it?
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all of you. Obviously, no winners in this case. As I thought about the case and I thought about the prosecution and the closing arguments, the prosecutor continued to comment and say that the officer chose this, chose that, and stated that she chose to shoot the victim. Here's my analogy. What if I'm driving a car, run a red light, kill a pedestrian? I've had 50 years of driving, no accidents. It's true that I chose to pick up my keys, back out of the driveway, drive down the road. I think the prosecutor would say I chose to run the red light. I think it was a tragic mistake and tragic accident. Our driver's going to be held liable, and our driver's going to be going to jail for deadly accidents.
Well, but I think they do. I mean, they do. And Dina Sayegdal, let me bring you in here. I mean, there's a case in the news right now about a truck driver who was speeding at 85 miles an hour, caused a crash where all these people died. He was facing like 110 years behind bars. As Sean Larkin mentioned a moment ago, we've got situations where people are texting as they're driving, and if an accident ensues, someone is charged. But I think that I think those are to some degree easier cases than this one was. I don't know. What do you make of it, Dina?
I mean, his point is good, though, because, in your examples, one, the person was speeding, the other, they were texting. Both of those things are illegal. If somebody literally was driving the speed limit, doing nothing wrong, but happened to go through a red light, they probably wouldn't be charged with manslaughter. And that's the problem in this case. To me, it was circular. The only thing she did wrong was pick up the gun. There was no other conscious act that she took other than that was negligent. And speaking to the crowd, I mean, I think this played into the case. How could it not? There is this frustration that police officers aren't held accountable. I mean, the number of motorists that are killed by police officers, 400 in the last 5 years, vast majority of them Black motorists, vast majority of police officers aren't charged, aren't convicted. I believe this played into the jury. I think they really felt this was very tragic. And could they yet again let this go unanswered? But my problem is in this particular case, I don't think there was enough negligence for her to be.
Right, but I should also say that those numbers, that everyone cites all the time, they're so manipulable. I mean, I've talked about this at length about, someone can make an argument that of all the cases out there where police shoot someone, what percentage are unarmed African American men? It's 2%. Okay, that doesn't necessarily tell us anything about some of the fundamental issues at play, and I think that sort of diverting attention, I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think that diverting attention from the case at hand and saying instead, well, there are these statistics out there, that to me isn't a justification. And Sean Larkin, again, as a police officer, that's the kind of thing that I would think would be particularly dispiriting, unlike the Attorney General of Minnesota saying, hey, we're not after you, are the people who are sort of focusing on the broader issues and just keep saying again and again that we have this major problem across the country with policing.
Sorry, Dan, I cut out. I lost you there, buddy.
Yeah, well, you know what? It was a super long rant that I just went on about. I don't know if you can still hear me, but it is, in my view, a problem that we keep sort of citing broader statistics that can be, and look, we have problems in this country. There is racism in this country, but police getting all the blame and always people talking about the fact that police officers aren't being charged and this and that. It's just not the case anymore. And I was asking Sean about the sense on that question.
No, it's definitely not the case. I'll be honest, Dan, I don't think it's been the case for quite a while. I mean, I know a lot of these incidents are obviously highly publicized and, they gravitate towards politics and things like that. But I hate to just be repetitive, but you and I have had numerous conversations, and I've told you that, myself, I've been involved in criminal investigations involving officers, and I'm talking 10, 12 years ago, early when I became a supervisor. So the police profession overall, we do a very, very good job of policing our own, and both for internal problems, criminal problems, and things like that. It's just typically, it's not publicized. When an officer is disciplined, whether it's a suspension or a letter in their file or they're terminated, typically it's not publicized, so the public just doesn't know that it happens, but it happens on a regular basis.
All right, well, look, the bottom line is that Kim Potter has been convicted, and I will tell you that what I've been sort of surprised about is the majority of officers that I've talked to have shared your view, Sticks, which is they understand the conviction. They're not outraged. They're not upset. They're not furious about the conviction. They understand it. But I think, again, this notion of somehow celebrating it, that to me is a real problem. All right, this is a bigger conversation. Robert Patillo, Dina Sayeghdal, Sean Larkin, and to Ted and Carolee for calling in. Thank you. Sticks, will check in with you later in the show. As a lawyer, I look at felonies and misdemeanors differently. We separate first degree from second degree and third degree. People convicted of minor crimes serve limited time and then go on with their lives. Harvey Weinstein can't and won't and shouldn't. But James Franco isn't Harvey Weinstein. And I believe it's important to make that distinction, Because if we don't, we end up becoming desensitized to the horrors of a Weinstein, or if the allegations are true, a Chris Noth. Joining me to discuss is Joanna Weiss, editor-in-chief of Experience magazine and a contributing editor to Politico magazine, where she writes about the intersection of politics and culture. Joanna, thank you for coming on the show. So you've heard I've gone on a bit of a rant here. So why don't I just begin by teeing it up for you and saying, what do you make of my comments?
Well, I understand your comments, and particularly I understand them coming from a lawyer, which I'm not. But, there is a reason why we have a legal system and a judicial system to play out these scenarios and to have a set of standards by which we judge and by which we punish. Because I think what's really happening here is that standards of behavior are changing. Behavior that men, particularly powerful, rich men, believed was okay to do for many, many years, whether the people on the other side of that behavior liked it or not. And there's a spectrum of behavior ranging, as you said, from gross to assault. But a lot of that behavior that was accepted or pushed aside, or sort of boys will be boys, men will be men, since Harvey Weinstein, that has changed. And there's a strong desire now for punishment of people who transgress at any point in that spectrum. But there are no, unless there's a sort of a court of law with standards and with due process, it's very difficult to know and agree on what the punishment should be.
Right. And I guess part of my concern, and this is partly the law's fault and the way it's characterized, is everything becomes a sexual assault, right? It becomes a sort of inappropriate touching is a sexual assault, and so is a violent rape. And yet I think that the media has kind of embraced that as an excuse to basically say everything's a sexual assault. This person was sexually assaulted. And it's like, wait a second, I'm concerned now that an allegation against Chris Noth or a Harvey Weinstein type, where you're talking about violent sexual assaults that are at a different level, become just acceptable. And I don't mean acceptable, like he's being punished, et cetera. But we end up forgetting about it, right? It falls into this long list of men who have been accused of bad behavior. And that's not the case. I mean, this is different. And I think we're becoming desensitized to it because the media has become so obsessed with that accountability for every small violation.
Well, some of this, again, I think is arguing the next call. It's putting people on notice who are going to be in this situation in the future. And there's a sense that, now if you're a man on a TV set, if you're a man on a movie set, if you're a man who has power, if you're a governor, if you're a person who has power over other people and you behave badly, there's not going to be tolerance for it like it used to be. I mean, look what just happened to Andrew Cuomo in New York. I think 20 years ago, he might have been able to skate by. And this year, he absolutely couldn't because the standards have changed. And whether or not he winds up being prosecuted or whether there are civil suits, he's paid the price. I think we have to enter a new phase where where we're not so concerned about punishment, or where we sort out what the appropriate punishment might be. And again, the media and social media are not great places to dole out punishment.
No, because everything is the death penalty on social media. No matter how small the violation is, it's this person is blank. And I think as a result of that, we really do lose the focus on the most serious allegation. I think you bring up a really interesting point about sort of needing to kind of recalibrate that now that there is this accountability on the lesser stuff, that we need to figure out how to better distinguish so that people can take more seriously the most serious types of allegations. And I won't get in trouble for saying that there's a difference, because I do get in trouble when I say it. When I point out, you're minimizing it. I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm trying to say that there is a difference, period. Let me give you a quick final word and then I got to wrap it up.
Sure. Well, yeah, there are times when maybe an apology, a heartfelt apology would suffice. Right. And there are times when someone does deserve to lose a career. And it's going to be difficult for a while to sort out who gets what punishment.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I think it's important to focus on this because no one else will talk about this because we all fear we're going to get in trouble for having this conversation. That's why I appreciate having an interesting, civil, nuanced conversation with you about it, Joanna. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up. An officer comes to his fellow officer's aid after a knife-wielding man accused of threatening his girlfriend lunges at an officer. More of the heart-pounding rescue coming up next. We're on scene with the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department showing you the dangers officers face every day. This is radio traffic between dispatchers and officers as police answered a domestic call.
It's going to be male versus female. Male has a knife. Medics are en route. They're going to stage 100 South, 4300 East. Charles 350, Charles 355, 455. Unit surface, I run to South Colorado Avenue. The female can be heard screaming. Female screaming, stop, Curtis, don't do this.
Officers heard a man and a woman yelling as they arrived. The suspect, Curtis Walker, had a knife and was threatening to harm his girlfriend. Police say Walker's mother was protecting the woman. Officer William Fulton cleared other people from the home and tried to get Walker to give himself up.
Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, everybody in the house, come to the front door. Somebody in here's getting stabbed. Step out here. Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, if you're inside, make yourself known.
Walker was in a bedroom as Officer Fulton continued into the home.
Hey! Police action shooting. What's that?
Now, what happened there was that Walker charged out of the bedroom with a knife between Officer Fulton and Officer Theodore Howlett, who was behind Walker, came in through another door. We're seeing video from both officers who ended up firing on the suspect. Medics were already at the scene and rushed in to give first aid. Walker survived and was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, an attempted domestic battery with a deadly weapon. An officer was hit in his bulletproof vest by crossfire, was treated and released from the hospital. No other injuries were reported. Court records show Walker was released from jail on bond after a judge reduced it from $80,000 to $2,000. The incident is still under investigation. Joining me again, Sean Sticks-Larkin, retired Tulsa police lieutenant. Sticks, there was crossfire here. Talk to us about how that happens and what officers can do to avoid it.
Yeah, obviously that's a tragic deal. I think just the circumstances of what happened there in that hallway is the only reason the officers ended up in that crossfire situation. That's something anytime we're containing a house, if you're on a car stop, anything like that, you are always aware of crossfire. And officers even pointed out, hey, we've got crossfire here. Let's reposition ourselves. But I think as they're going down the hall the way they did, the officer just put himself a little bit out in front of the door rather than doing what we do, kind of pieing off the corner, looking into the room. And so the only action he had at that moment was basically a step forward, on the other side of the door, which put the suspect between the 2 officers. Obviously, one officer shot because he, was in danger himself of being injured, and then the other officer recognized that his partner was in danger.
We don't usually focus on this sort of issue on this segment, but are you concerned that this guy was released on bail?
Dan, it is something, yes, I'll answer that first. Yes, I could probably go story after story after story on people that are committing acts of violence that have bonds significantly reduced, which I do not understand. It's one of the many issues in the criminal justice system that I think people should look at.
Yeah, look, that's not typically what we do in this segment, but when I heard about that it was reduced after attacking a police officer like that. Whoa. Sean, thanks so much. Appreciate it. That does it for us tonight. NewsNation Prime starts right now. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.